Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sara Gottfried. I help people balance their hormones naturally so that they can rock their mission. And we're here in my living room with Abel James, Dr. Pedram Shojai, and Ken Cook of the Environmental Working Group. Welcome everybody. Super happy to be with you.
Great to be here.
Yay!
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ken, one of the things that we talk about a lot, just in our inner circles, is just the democracy that we live in was really predicated on having an enlightened citizenry, right? And that enlightened citizenry would then go and vote on matters and things that were important, that would then help guide the government in how it helped us live our lives and protect us and all this. And we've seen a dramatic breakdown of this, with people just kind of becoming disassociated with the issues, people being disillusioned with Washington politics and all this. And so, a lot of what we do is drive consumers to kind of vote with their dollars and buy things to support products that make the world a better place. But we really don't want to discount what's happening and what needs to be happening in Washington. And I want you to kind of speak to this a little bit.
Well, sure. I mean, we come across this all the time. And, we started off at Environmental Working Group as purely a public policy shop. We were there to change public policy, and it's still an important part of our mission. But when I hear people say, look, I've given up on Washington, or, I don't want to get involved in this farm bill fight. It's been going on and on for so long, and it seems like nothing ever changes. Or I don't think, I don't want to go up against these electric utilities to make sure that solar panels can be put on our homes and we can net meter back the savings and make them pencil out for our family. You hear that all the time. And so and my reaction is, you know who's still excited about Washington? I know you're not excited, but you know who's still excited about Washington? All the lawyers and the lobbyists that work for the power companies, that work for big food. There are more of them in Washington than ever, and they are loving it. They're making good money, and they feel like they are making the government do its bidding. So if you want to leave it to them, step back and just, live inside your life, and I hope you live it well. But just know this, that there are people working day and night in Washington, and they're paid extremely well to do it, to make the problems that you're trying to solve in your home even worse. They're trying to make the food worse. They're trying to make sure the energy grid stays locked into fossil fuels. They're trying to make sure that your consumer products aren't tested adequately, that the drugs come to the market before they're really thoroughly vetted. You fill in the blank. Those people are more excited about government and Washington than ever. And the more we get discouraged by the shenanigans in Congress, and believe me, we're all discouraged by it. We haven't passed a major environmental law in Washington and had it sent to the president's desk in 17 years. So we're approaching a generation where we really haven't enacted a law that specifically is designed to protect the environment. The last two were the pesticide law in '96 and the drinking water amendments in 1996, in the same summer, and that's been it. So we are really up against it. And while we want people to shop their way and change their behavior in ways that take them out of personal environmental problems, and that will have a huge impact on markets and on the environment and on their personal health, we know that's critical. We want to invite people to step into civil society again. Reclaim our government. Reclaim your right as a citizen, just as you described it, Pedram, just as you described it. We expect our representatives in Washington to act out of duty. And the definition of duty that matters here to me is a moral obligation, a moral responsibility to do the right thing and get something done. Why do we have such a difficult time getting healthy fruits and vegetables into school lunches? Because we're not investing in it. We're letting these other lobbyists for the meat industry and for the sugar industry and all the rest, we're letting them take charge, them deal with the bureaucracy and deal with Congress to make sure their stuff is going on our kids' plates at school. You want to fight that? I want to fight it.
I want to fight it.
Let's
Right.
bring it
So,
on.
very persuasive argument. And it reminds me a bit of addiction. And the idea in addiction that your addiction is doing push-ups in the parking lot. You're saying the same thing about the lobbyists, right? They're doing push-ups in Washington. They're getting stronger. They're all in. So if you're feeling apathetic and you're trying to figure out, okay, do I really want to fight this fight? It's time.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the practical ways that people can do that? I mean, you have this unbelievable organization that is helping us with that. Could we go over what you think are the 3 biggest needle movers? What can our consumers who are listening do today? 3 things.
To step into the civil realm, to civil society, and be an effective force. Well,
yes.
First of all, we like to think that if you pay attention to the work we're doing at Environmental Working Group, you'll be informed. You'll know that there's a debate underway in Washington over our agriculture policy, and that a huge part of that debate has to do with how we grow, what we grow, and what level of nutrition assistance we provide to the poorest among us. That set of issues bundled up into something we call the Farm Bill is critically important for the non-insiders, the non-lobbyists to pay attention to, because it really will determine. So step number 1, check out what's going on now through Environmental Working Group, or lots of other organizations in the environmental space who are really letting people know if they take the time. Find a group that you like and trust. If it's not Environmental Working Group, you'll find someone else out there who's doing great work on wilderness, important work dealing with toxic chemicals or worrying about air pollution and so forth. So that's step 1. Secondly, pick an area of your life and try and find out what's going on with respect to public policy in that area. So I'll give you an example. Personal care products. Every woman in America, right? At least. And increasingly the men. All right. So here's the thing. I'm going to explain to you how the chemicals that go in those products are regulated, and you're not going to believe me. So here's how they're regulated. The Food and Drug Administration, which has responsibility for personal care products, for cosmetics, Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act was the founding legislation for that agency. They do no pre-market testing of any kind for any of the ingredients or the products that are on your shelves at the grocery store, the supermarket, or at the counter of the makeup department in your favorite department store. No pre-market testing at all. The testing that is done by an entity that was established by law, by Congress, to be not governmental but quasi-governmental. So you have the approval of the government, the imprimatur of the government, but you don't actually, or you're not composed of government independent experts. You're instead the Cosmetic Ingredient Review Panel. This is who reviews the ingredients in your personal care products. Who are they? Well, it's a group of experts that are hired by the cosmetics industry, paid by the cosmetics industry, and whose offices are actually in the same location as the trade association for the cosmetics industry, and they're the ones that are reviewing the ingredients to see if they're okay to put in your personal care products.
So my safety,
you don't believe that, do you? You don't believe that?
No, I totally believe you. No, it makes sense to me. So you're basically saying I'm on my own, because the only organization that is looking out at the safety of my cosmetics or other personal items is has a complete conflict of interest.
It's a creature of industry itself. It's a creature of the very same industry that benefits from selling whatever they can put into personal care products. So stepping back, to your original question. So here's a part of your life that you probably didn't think was connected to the environment at all, and you just assumed, like a lot of people do, that when you go into a drugstore, you go into a department store and you buy your favorite shampoo, or you buy a perfume, or whatever you buy. You assume that someone, maybe in government, has taken a look at that and decided it's okay for you to put on your hair, or your skin, or your lips, or whatever. Not so. So first, pay attention to what's happening in Washington. Secondly, make a connection between something in your everyday life and how the government, how Washington interacts with that. And then the third thing is, and this is really something that I've only discovered since I've become a parent, which is kind of have a childlike curiosity about how the world works. And it sounds like an odd thing to
No,
suggest.
I like this. Beginner's mind.
It is a beginner's mind. It is absolutely saying, look at any particular object in your life or whatever, and not that you should obsess about it or, stop the rest of your life so that you can contemplate it, but just ask yourself a question. Well, all these things that I'm surrounded by, the fabrics, the materials, the plastics, and so forth, who's looking out after the safety of it? Mm-hmm. Which industries are producing it? How do they? And what happens if there's a fight in Washington over chemical safety? BPA, bisphenol A, perfect example. You'd have to have lived under a rock for the past 10 years to not know about the debate over this chemical. And if you've looked at it, the debate at all, you know that industry is defending it as perfectly safe, and many independent scientists and environmental advocates have said there's more than enough reason for concern here. We ought to be moving this out of consumer products. When you see a debate like that in the newspaper, tap into it. Find out, look at the sources, and see where the connection is between what you're exposing your family to. Some of these chemicals are used in baby bottles and sippy cups. They're no longer allowed for that use in the country, but we had to fight the fight. And industry spent millions trying to stop us. Look at these things that are hotly contested. Where there's a big contest like that, that's in the public eye, it's likely there's a technology or an industry that is underneath it all, that is fighting desperately to cling to an old business model that I don't blame them in any personal way. They feel that they're doing the right thing. They feel the science is on their side. We don't have to demonize them. We just have to know that to give up that business model is frightening to them.
Yes.
And that's reason enough for them to cling to it. They'll lose money, they'll lose jobs, they'll have to make changes happen. We can do that, but those fights are moments where I think the public can tune in and say, I may end up agreeing with industry, but I'm going to look into that fight a little bit. I'm going to see who's on each side. I'm going to look at the evidence because this pattern is going to play out again and again and again, and I want to learn how to be a student of these debates. So those are the three ways to do it.
Well, I so appreciate your objectivity, especially on that last one. So I want to recap. So number one, pay attention to what's happening in Washington, such as the Farm Bill.
Yes.
EWG.org. Number two, find your personal portal, whether that's cosmetics or GMOs or
food,
conventional meat. Number three, have that childlike curiosity, the beginner's mind, where you can look objectively at the information. I so appreciate that. So you brought up bisphenol A, and can we talk BPA a little bit? Because we've got fat burning man, Abel James here, and both Abel and I have a story of being fat in the past. I lost 25 pounds, and you've lost weight as well to become who you are in the world. And I feel like so many of our listeners and viewers don't realize that if you just take something like bisphenol A, it is a fake estrogen. It is an anti-androgen, so it can lower your testosterone levels. In fact, it's linked to issues with puberty in boys. I just saw some new data on that a month ago. It's also anti-thyroid, so it slows down that part of your body that controls your weight, keeps the hair on your head, helps you.
Other little things like that.
Lots of important things. Your mood.
Kind of important. No biggie.
Kind of important. And here we are with bisphenol A still in our daily experience, right? I mean, What are some of the number one sources of bisphenol A that our listeners and viewers are coming into contact?
Well, until fairly recently, especially for infant exposure, it has been sippy cups and baby bottles for one thing. Those plastic.
Shameful.
I think so. Some of the water bottles, the aluminum water bottles, were lined with bisphenol A. We came to find out too late. Receipts,
Yes.
cash register
This is
receipts.
huge. This is huge.
We tested cash register receipts a few years ago and found very high levels. And all of us have had them in our wallets or in our purse or stack, and it rubs off and it pretty immediately transfers into the blood, according to French studies that have been done of that particular exposure moment.
So that's a huge takeaway. So when you get asked, do you want the receipt in the bag or do you want to take it? put it in the bag.
Don't touch
But
it.
put gloves on before you take that thing out.
Or send it electronically, like
Or-
you can do at more
I don't
stores.
want a
Yeah.
receipt.
Yeah.
Send
I
me,
don't want
send
a
me some
receipt.
pixels.
Yeah.
Don't send me the BPA.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
And save a tree
beautiful.
while you're at it.
I have a woman who said to me last week, she's 46 years old, lives in San Francisco, and we were talking about her liver. She's at a place where she's taking really good care of herself. She eats organic, no genetically modified foods. She just went through my detox. She's eating really clean. She's exercising, and yet her body fat is high. She's what we call a skinny fat person. So she actually has a body fat of 32%, which is the line for obesity, even though her body mass index is normal. So she looks thin when she's wearing a t-shirt and jeans, but her fat's on the higher side. We know that these endocrine disruptors actually are obesogens. They make
can
us
be, yeah.
fat. They make us fat. So she said to me, I take such good care of myself, but I still have this problem with my liver. So we were looking at her liver tests, and her liver shows signs of being congested. Her liver enzymes are a little higher than we'd like. And one of the common reasons for that is exposure to organic solvents, endocrine disruptors. And so I asked her about cosmetics. And she's pretty enlightened. And she said, well, I understand you want me to use organic cosmetics, and I did that. I downloaded that Skin Deep Guide. Got it right here. The Skin Deep Guide from ewg.org. But I really like Chanel. Now, I don't want to beat up Chanel, but she likes to go to Chanel.
She has a brand she likes.
She has a brand that she likes. She
Yeah.
likes to go to Chanel, and she likes to get her look twice a year.
They got her color, they got her thing.
They got her
she's
color.
used to it.
She's like brand loyalty.
And it makes her feel great.
And it makes her feel great.
Lots
But
of
one way.
advertising goes behind that, yeah.
she is skinny fat.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh my gosh, here's a moment. Here's a teachable moment. We can take on Chanel. So what would you say to her as you're trying to get her to turn the corner
Yeah.
toward
yeah.
a way of looking at how she might be slathering on, 300 endocrine disruptors with her cosmetics?
It's a sensitive moment, right? Because you don't want to. Your ability to help this woman get healthy and stay healthy depends on the personal relationship you have with her. And doctor, you're the same way, right? And you're the same way in your practice. So, and we feel the same way. We don't want to scare someone off. And so, my advice is, whether it's red lipstick, almost all of which has lead in it or whatever, what we say is, look at how often you use it, how often you're exposing yourself. We're not saying you should never use a brand that makes you feel great, even if that's an artifact of marketing. We all have these things that we're linked to, right? That we have, we don't even have the time to examine how we came to have this brand loyalty. So what I say is to someone like that, don't feel like you have to give up modern life or all of your habits, but ask yourself, do you need to wear that particular product every day to feel good? Can you start experimenting with cutting back on it? Because as you do that, you're going to reduce the exposure. Now, there's no safe level of lead, but that's no reason to think that if you're looking at a lipstick that we know has lead in it, well then, if it makes you feel great on a Saturday night to wear it, fine. But really think about, do you need that kind of feel good about yourself in the workplace every day? Probably not. Probably not.
I'm glad I didn't wear my red lipstick.
Well,
I have my
Guilty as
organic lip gloss today.
Organic, clean Sara Gottfried.
and I have cut way back on my red lipstick too.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it's just
Except on a good Saturday
it's
night.
just weekend. It's just a weekend thing. It's just a weekend thing, and I usually have a schoolgirl uniform on too. So it fits, right?
Different
It's just,
math, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's just. I mean, just picture it. But no, I mean, look, we're all trying to figure this out, right? And I think the worst thing for someone to come away with is a lesson that it's hopeless. Unless I'm 100% organic in my diet, I might as well not bother. And we know from marketing studies that some people feel that way. They won't put a single thing in their cart because it makes them feel guilty that they haven't put everything in their cart organic.
Yeah.
And we really have to get over that, because that's not how healing happens for people or the planet, and at least in my experience. You really want to engage people in a way where they're starting.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it was John Dewey, I think, who said, not all children are geniuses. It's just that some are less damaged than others, right? And really, we're all trying to be less damaged in some way so that we can fulfill whatever potential we have. And so to me, I would say to your patient, you look great, and we're working on all your medical concerns. Why not try and just make some changes around the edges and see if you don't still feel beautiful and alive and vivacious, or whatever you're trying to feel that this particular brand of cosmetic makes you feel. Find a way to feel it differently, or find a way to feel that 5 days out of the week through a different portal.
Love it.
I got something quick to say about this, because there's a statistic that I always raise with people who get into this argument with me and say, your average woman in the West will swallow 10 pounds of lipstick in their life. So, we'll pull out the lipstick, we'll look at the label and say, can you pronounce this stuff? Would you eat 10 pounds of this if you had your druthers? Well, the fact of the matter is you are. Right? And what really kind of changes the math for me is you're doing it to feel pretty, but when you're poisoning yourself and losing that vitality, then you've got to take on more to feel pretty. Whereas once you're actually healthy, you glow from the inside out. Your lips are redder. You feel better.
Yeah.
You're more beautiful.
Right. There's no question. It's a very good point. And we've heard since we started publishing Skin Deep. I had a cosmetics industry executive say to me, you're really very good at what you do at Environmental Working Group. And I said, how is that?
Where's the other
How is that?
Exactly. What's coming next?
And what she said was, I wish I'd thought of it as a way to market Environmental Working Group, because it was the best phrase I've ever heard. She said, before you started EWG and Skin Deep, women thought they were putting on makeup, and now they think they're putting on chemicals.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom!
Up top.
Shake,
That's
shake,
awesome.
the room.
Yeah.
I mean,
Love it.
and that connection, just that moment. We've been talking about habits, right, and the way they're formed, right. So there's the cue. I need new lipstick. Then there's the routine. I go to my favorite department store where everyone's dressed in white and they look like Cupid dolls, but it really looks like they paid attention to their looks, right? If nothing else,
It is
right?
a little creepy now
It
that
is
you
a.
say it.
It is. It is.
Oh, yeah.
I find it a little creepy. The only thing I find creepier is what we do, what we sell little girls to dress up in on Halloween, which is very much of a piece. But and then the third thing is the reward, right? So that's how a habit's constructed, as neuroscience tells us. So to me, what you want to do is, the cue is going to be there. I'm out of lipstick. Or I need something that makes me some component of my medicine cabinet, my makeup container that makes me feel beautiful. So how do you change the routine in the middle? And it may just be, healthier eating where you begin to get compliments for how you look when you're not wearing makeup. Who knows what it is? But that routine in the middle is what we're worried about trying to change. So we want someone to try an organic cosmetic line, or a cosmetic line that scores well in Skin Deep. Do away with some of the ones that are obviously bad, full of phthalates or other chemicals, right? And then, but they have to have the same reward at the end. or they won't.
They have to feel
The
hot.
habit.
Yeah.
That's right. Or the habit won't form. The new habit won't gel around a new routine. It won't, and we won't get those benefits. We won't get the abs, right? Oh, those aren't abs. I know they're down lower, but I'm not doing that. I know
This would be a
that.
different
I
kind
know
of
that.
interview.
I didn't go to medical school, but I know that's
Pecs are actually pretty good.
the pecs. I'm sure are probably fine. But you're not going to get. You're not going to get that improvement in the liver. You're not going to get that reduction in lead exposure through lipstick if you can't change these routines in the middle. Once you get the cue, whether it's a cue to snack or it's a cue to turn on the TV for 3 hours or whatever it is, and then you go into the routine and then you feel satisfied at the end somehow, but the satisfaction is leading you to an unhealthy path.
And there's another really interesting factor at work here, where it's like as soon as you see a new product coming out that's supposed to make your face prettier, your lips more red, or whatever, you suddenly have a deficiency in this product, right?
Yes.
It's like, how did we ever exist before this magical new makeup or something like that? When I was kind of shifting my own cupboards and bathroom into being safe, as opposed to toxic, a really interesting thing happened because I shifted my diet around the same time.
Right.
And all of these things that I'd been using since puberty, really, I tried to see what would happen if I didn't use them anymore. And so deodorant was an example. And I assumed that as soon as I stopped using deodorant and just put coconut oil under there or whatever, that I would smell horrible, I'd be sweating all day, and it would be a horrible experience for me and everyone around me. But what actually happened was nothing. Nothing really changed.
That's why no one who's invented deodorant has ever won the Nobel Prize. because it turns out we didn't absolutely need it. That's right. Yeah.
And not that I don't use it now, I do, but I use a very safe, very minimal kind that's made up of safe ingredients. They're really easy to find. And I think that doesn't just, it's not limited to deodorant or makeup or anything else like that. It's like, how many products are you using every single day, and how safe are those products for you? From the bar of soap that you have to the water that's coming out, that may be full of chlorine and fluoride and all this other stuff.
Right.
When you start to clean up just a few things, you notice that you don't smell as horrible as you used to because of your diet, because that was full of toxins and pesticides and foods that you're not digesting well. You have horrible gut flora. When you clean that up, all of a sudden you magically don't need all of these hundreds of products that you
bad
thought
for
you needed
business. Bad for business.
Oh, it's horrible for business.
You're a communist.
But you save a lot of money.
That's right.
And that really resonates with people. When you realize you don't
course.
need to buy hundreds of products every month, all of a sudden you can just exist, and you're healthy, and you're happy, and you're vibrant, and you have good color, and you're saving money. And I think that's what really resonates with a lot of families who are just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because they're worried about all these chemicals. It's like, well, you don't have to worry about those if you're not buying them anymore.
Right. And it's so insidious because, I have a 5-year-old now, and he sees these cues all the time on television and elsewhere that all, they all lead to buying stuff. And, it's toys, it's foods, it's sugary snacks, it's the whole thing. It's just an onslaught. And, so when you see those pliable young minds absorbing all of this, it's really dispiriting. It really tells you what we're up against. But you're right. Once I teach Cal that we can go mountain biking and we don't have to sit and watch a cartoon show, right? And he's got a 12-inch wheel on his mountain bike. So it's not right. And he says, "Daddy, will you call me now Mountain Bike Mike? You can change my name." Sure. I'll call you whatever you want. But you take people out of these normal behaviors. You shock them. Having a family does that. Having a health problem does that. These are moments of shock and awe where you think, "Oh my! Well, nothing else was important before compared to this. Nothing. Doesn't matter what I have. Doesn't matter how much I make. None of that matters. What matters is this moment that's so intimate. This little life that I'm molding or trying to mold and protect. Or, I've gotten a bad diagnosis." or my friend has gotten a bad diagnosis. You deal with this. I know you deal with it every day.
Every day.
And in those moments, people can make a change. That's an opening.
Mm-hmm. It's a sad moment though, because
Yeah.
when they get there, there's so much extra work to do.
Yes.
It's like, I'm going to go drinking and driving and smash my car and destroy a whole part of the city and maybe like rip apart a family, and then have to go mend that wound.
Yeah.
Versus just not getting in the car and not
That's right.
causing that terrible tragedy that is the health crises that like wash up on the beaches of our practices all the
That's
time,
right.
right?